Good morning, everybody. My name is Amritha Ivatooori. I am a passionate culture driver. At the last company I worked, I played various roles, starting from a software developer to senior product analyst. And I have an MBA from ASU, enjoy teaching kids in my spare time. And the cultural values that I hold dear are diversity, inclusion, fearless dialogue, and fun. Let me introduce you to my esteemed colleague, Daniella Iannotti, who is a mission-driven cultural leader, a global social impact fellow, marketing director, who is from Rhode Island. She enjoys sailing, yoga, and gardening. And culture values that are most important to her are diversity, inclusion, development, and ingenuity. So you must be wondering how a nerdy software developer got to work with this cool marketing director. During 2019, during the period 2019 and 2021 at Cyber Scout, under our CEO's leadership, our passion for culture brought us together. We cultivated a grassroots intentional culture movement, and which led to positive business outcomes. The initiative included kicking off 15 employee-led culture programs and had over 40% of employees engaged, improved employee retention, and attracted new and diverse talent. As a result of this culture initiative at the company, we, being a global company, strengthened cross-cultural awareness among 125 employees across 9 different countries speaking various different languages. It was truly a cross-cultural education. During the same period, key segments grew over 60% year over year. So culture is not necessarily just a feel-good, warm, fuzzy. It is something that provides tangible business outcomes. The agenda today. Today we will discuss what is company culture. Why should I care about company culture? Why is it important? And what do I look for when I'm looking for the right culture fit during the process of a job search? And we will wrap it up with culture case studies. So I'm interested to know how many of you are familiar with the concept of organizational culture? Very cool. So what is culture? Organizational culture is defined as the underlying beliefs, assumptions, values, and ways of interacting that contribute to the unique social and psychological environment of an organization, per the classical definition. What it is really is the internal and external identity of a company. What it means is it informs employees what behaviors are expected, accepted, and rewarded. It informs the management what behaviors and behaviors to reward. It is driven by the values and the organizational culture is defined as the underlying beliefs, assumptions, values, and ways of interacting that contribute to the unique social and psychological environment of an organization, per the classical definition. What it is really is the internal and external identity of a company. What it means is it informs employees what behaviors are expected, accepted, and rewarded. It informs the management what behaviors and behaviors to reward. It is driven by the values and the philosophy of the company and determines how interactions take place. These are the written and unwritten rules. So, does culture even matter? Apparently, it does. Over 79% of job seekers look at culture and company purpose before they even apply. 90% of CEOs think culture is important, and 60% say that influences productivity. And at least a third of employees are actually willing to take a pay cut so they can be in a company with the most appropriate culture fit. 35% of American workers would actually pass up an otherwise perfect job if there is no culture fit. And that makes sense because a culture fit sets you up for success. So I'm curious to know, while job searching, does company culture factor into your decision? Very cool. That's expected. It's about 70% of job finders culture make culture a priority in their job search. So what can culture be? Let's hear from Daniella.
Hey, thanks, Am. Am shared the formal definition and explored why culture matters. And I think the truth is, when it comes to culture, really it's something that can't be defined so easily. Oftentimes it's a sum of all of the intangibles. So what is organizational culture when we're actually living in it? So we like to say you kind of know it when you feel it. It's a feeling that you'd have collectively or individually working within an organization. And it's more than just a poster on the wall. So I think many of us have worked in companies where either on the office wall or on a job site or in a production room, we see corporate culture type messages on the wall or values. And the truth is sometimes that's just where they stay. Nobody looks at them or talks about them. But for other companies, these values are actually kept top of mind and efforts are made to incorporate them into the day-to-day. For another perspective on culture is that it is truly individual and collectively experienced. So the culture as a whole, as a company, may be very different than one person's individual experience. It's also ever evolving. So as companies change, leadership changes, staff changes, with that, so does the culture, and it can be for better or worse depending on your perspective. Culture is intentional and or unintentional. So much like that poster on the wall, is leadership working to incorporate the values into the everyday, into the day-to-day? Are they consciously making efforts to shape the culture and the shared and individual experience? Are they implementing programs and actively seeking to create a certain culture? Those would be examples of intentional culture. And then unintentional is sort of the natural evolution of where the culture stands. Again, it's subjective, it's different for everyone. The culture of an organization at any given time might be a great fit for one person, but not another. And similarly, it's variable from company to different departments and teams. Okay, so what elements of culture should you consider when looking at a new role? So again, this is all really based on what matters to you, but some things to possibly take note of. Some of those intangibles are, as you look around, like, is everyone on board? Is everybody engaged? What are the working styles that are really embraced? Is there an opportunity to work independently, or is it more team-based? And how does that feel for you? Is the schedule more flexible or more traditional? Take a look at the communication methods and styles. So does leadership communicate to employees? Is there an opportunity for feedback from employees back up? How about cross-functional or cross-departmental communication? What are the methods and styles that are in play there? Who's empowered to make decisions? How is success and failure handled? Is it a trust or a fear-based leadership? And again, there's no judgment there. So either one can work for different people. Is it a rapid innovation environment or more slow and steady? Are they embracing diversity and are they inclusive? Is there an emphasis on personal and team development and opportunities to pursue that? And at the end of the day, is progress actually being made? These are just some examples of what can influence that intangible feel of the culture of any given company. And now, yep. Now, yep, go ahead.
Southwest Airlines is an example of one of those companies that puts culture front and center. This is their careers page, and you can see that right in the middle of it is join a company with heart. Their ticker symbol is love. And if you look at their page, culture is up top. They take great pride in their culture. However, remember that it is not necessarily good or bad. It depends on, and sometimes what companies advertise is their aspirational state as well. And sometimes it could be well imbibed in the company's culture within the company. But at the end of the day, it is what the employee experiences. So I'm curious to know, has any one of you ever left a job because of the organization's culture? Interesting. We have a split here. That's true. For some people, culture is very important. On the flip side, though, has anyone here ever stayed in a job because of the organization's culture? That's right. It can go both ways. Like we've seen in the earlier slide, some people are willing to take a pay cut just for a culture fit. So evaluating culture can happen at every stage of job search. We've classified this into 4 sections. The first one is self-reflection, because the one constant at any workplace is you. It's important for you to know what works for you. The second step is the job search. This phase starts when you are looking at job descriptions. You're just looking for work, and the stage ends when you've applied for jobs. And the third stage, the interviewing stage, starts after you've finished application. You're now receiving calls from interviewers from different companies, the HR, and you're going through the interview process, and ends before you've actually either received a rejection or an offer. The post-offer stage begins after you've received an offer and ends when you have either accepted or rejected the offer. So let's dive into phase 1, which is self-reflection. As I said before, you are the constant in every job you take up. So what kind of environments work best for you? Some environments bring out the best in you. What is it about those environments that brings out the best in you? What kind of work environments have not worked well for you in the past? So what do you love? What can you live with? And what you cannot live with? You need to know all 3 aspects of a work environment. What motivates you to really show up? What is it about your work that makes you want to wake up in the morning, get out of bed, and go there and kill it? So what is your purpose? What drives you beyond your paycheck? So let's hear from Daniella about how we can go about this first step.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, this process of really trying to explore who you are and what motivates you can be a lot of fun and can be really insightful. And these are just a few of the many resources that are available out there to start that process. So just a couple examples here. We have a couple books. One many of you may already be familiar with or have read. It's called What Color is Your Parachute? Your Guide to a Lifetime of Meaningful Work and Career Success. It's written by Richard Bowles. It was actually originally published back in the 70s, and it's been updated every year since. It's designed specifically for job seekers like you to understand what matters to you and help you find a fulfilling role. So check that out. And then secondly, something newer, Designing Your Life, How to Build a Well-Lived Joyful Life. This is actually based on a very popular class at Stanford University. And in it, the authors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans lead readers through a process of identifying and building a meaningful life and career. So both of those books have been really helpful. And then self-assessments. This can also be a lot of fun. For starters, the Myers-Briggs or MBTI, some of you may have taken that in the past as well. It's been around for a long time, remains sort of tried and true. And it's a questionnaire that you take, and it helps you indicate sort of different psychological preferences in terms of how you perceive the world and make decisions. And at the end, you kind of see where you fall in within the 16 profile types. And then you can learn about what that might mean about you and the kinds of work environments that you thrive in. This is available online for like a full service version that I believe is paid, but there's also some free similar models available as well. Also, we have Ikigai. So this is a Japanese concept that means reason for being. And what they've done is they've mapped out a little bit of a process to help you find your Ikigai. And that's really looking at what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, sort of finding the connections within all those four and understanding where you might want to focus in order to find that balance and joy and meaning in your work. And then third there, we have the Gallup Clifton Strengths Finder. It's called the Clifton Strengths 34 Assessment. It's available at gallup.com. I believe it's $49. You go through the process and it helps reveal sort of your own unique talent profile. And people say it helps them to gain greater confidence and empowerment over their strengths, and then also to help them sort of manage any weaknesses that might emerge as well. So those are three that have been very helpful, and we encourage you to take a look. And then video, as you can imagine, YouTube has a plethora of resources around how to find your purpose, but to tie back to the Ikigai earlier, Tom Tamashiro's video on that is quite helpful. So those are some resources we recommend. Again, none of these are like the Bible. It's really about exploring, getting a feel what resonates for you. And also, if you want ideas for additional resources, feel free to reach out to Amri at any time.
So now let's look at phase 2. This is the early job search. Now you know what you want, what you can't handle, and what you can live with, right? And now you're starting to apply for job search. The most important some of the ways you would go about this, and some of the ways you would go about looking for culture at this stage is primarily through networking, where you seek out roles in companies where people you have worked well with in the past currently work. The job description in LinkedIn or other places can be quite telling. A lot of times companies give little hints about what the culture could be in their job description. Sometimes they call out culture prominently, sometimes not so much. All of these can be quite telling. And remember that all of these are different data points, and not one or the other, different things hold different weightage for different people. But remember to aggregate this data and not put too much stock in just one element. So the other places you can go about finding this information is in LinkedIn company profile and people. And I have a friend that actually looks at the pictures on the LinkedIn profile of the people just to see if their culture is reflected in those pictures. For instance, there is a company that talks about how diverse and inclusive they are, but the pictures don't reflect the same thing, there is a disconnect. And that's just one of the things to note. A good place to read employee reviews is Glassdoor.com, Salary.com. Again, it's possible that these reviews are also skewed because sometimes negative reviewers tend to feel more compelled to review than happy employees. Glassdoor.com is also a great resource for leadership ratings. Check out the recent news or media to see what the company is in the news for. So let's go through a live example of how you would evaluate a job from the job description forward. I am going to share a different window right now, real quick. So let's navigate to this job description. The first thing that caught my eye is that they demand high performance and reliability. They are working for people who enjoy a challenge, and then they build enduring relationships and foster trust between colleagues. And they are a global, results-oriented company that works cross-functionally. So to me, this is something that appeals to me because I like collaborating and working across functions. From here on forward, let's go on and take a look at the company itself on LinkedIn. Here you can see, I'd like to draw your attention to just a couple of elements that I look at. There is a wealth of information on LinkedIn for you to explore. If it's a public company, you could actually see how they're performing in the stock market and link out to it. Although I'd hold off on doing a deep dive until a little later. And here are some pictures about people at the company having fun. And one element that I pay attention to is the median tenure to see how long people stay at the company. It's not necessarily good or bad because some companies just by the nature of the industry they're in tend to have greater turnover than certain others. But that's just important for me to note. You could look at the people. If you're looking for a breakdown about the diversity in the organization, for me, I'm looking at this company where I see that most of their employee base is in Canada and USA, and that helps. That could prompt you to ask questions about whether there are going to be interesting hours in order to be able to collaborate with your teammates. Now, from here on, let's take a quick look at their website. For me, it's interesting to note, I like to go to their About Us page, give a quick view, see what they are most proud of. Here, it seems like they're trying to draw attention to their corporate responsibility initiatives, which I think is pretty awesome. Look at their careers page and how culture is again centered here. From here on, I like to look at their Glassdoor's review. Ooh, look at that. Okay, so the point I was trying to make here is sometimes the information you see in one place may not align with the information you see at another place. At this point, we need to take the information we see with a grain of salt because, again, data is not perfect. It could be skewed depending on who the respondents are. Moving on. So we've looked at their LinkedIn profile, the company website, Glassdoor reviews, and now you've decided, hey, this is just the place that I want to work at, and now you've applied. And after you've applied, you've received a call for an interview. What are the things you would look for in terms of culture at this stage? We recommend that you look at leadership presentations, quotes, videos, podcasts, press releases, anything that's out there about the company that you could do a little more of a deep dive on. The social media. Usually companies have social media pages. Check out what they're saying. The company blog. Now is a great time to look at the financial profiles of the companies if you're into it. There are various places. Either you can link out, as you've seen from LinkedIn, or you can look on Yahoo or Google Finance pages. Before COVID happened, there would be interviews in physical office spaces. And if you were to be in a physical office space, there are a few things you could note. For instance, if there are, you could check if there are collaboration spaces, or if everything is in closed rooms or in silos. How do people, what's the environment like? Is there verbiage on the walls or wherever? Is there something that the company wants to tell you about who they are and what their culture and values are? It's important to know that, as important as it is for the company to know if you are a fit in the organization, it is important for you to know if the organization would fit you. So interviewing is a great time to interview the interviewer. Ask them about culture questions that matter to you. Note how they interact with you. I like to draw a parallel between a dating and a job search. And if you see any red flags during this time, make sure you either follow back up with additional questions or reevaluate your choice. What is the overall hiring experience and process like? Does it feel rigorous? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some roles require rigor, right? And again, it's about what you are comfortable with. Most importantly, there is no information that you could get directly from employees. Talking to current and previous employees is very important. Daniella will walk us through various tips about how to do that and what questions to ask at the time.
Like Am said, really you could gather lots of evidence online and in person, but really at the end of the day, there's no better resource to give you a sense or a perspective on the culture than talking to employees, preferably more than one. And so that could mean talking to a friend or a connection that you have that already works there or has worked there in the past. Perhaps there's someone that you can have a mutual connection with who can introduce you if you don't know anyone directly. But then also, don't be afraid if you don't know anyone and you don't have any connections to introduce. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone who maybe you don't know. There's actually a name for that. It's an informational interview, and you can feel free to reach out. No strings attached for the other person. It's okay if they say no or they don't have time, but it's worth asking for that interview if that's possible, particularly someone who might be working in the same capacity or location or team as you. And so when you do have the opportunity to chat, some questions that you would want to ask, and again, this is all going to be based on what's important to you. Hopefully at this point, based on what's important to you, you'll have some burning questions around what you really want to get to the heart of. So that might be something like, what does a typical day look like or feel like for you? How does the organization support your career development and personal growth, if that's a priority for you? Are company values actually incorporated into the hiring and performance reviews? What's one thing you would change about the company if you could? I like that question because it gives them an opportunity to comfortably answer if there's anything that they would seek to improve. Maybe not everything is perfect. What would they want to improve? How are decisions made when there's a disagreement? And how does the company celebrate its successes?
So now you've interviewed, you've rugged it, and you've received an offer. At this time, it's important to make your decision. What do you look for culture-wise at this stage? At this stage, it's important to ask questions. Any questions you may have held off because a lot of people feel uncomfortable talking about culture in the initial conversation. So if you haven't had a chance to talk about it in the past, now is the time. And negotiating conversations can be very telling. How are they receiving your questions? How are they responding to your questions? Again, I like to say I like to draw parallels between job search and dating. If there are any red flags now, please don't ignore them, because what you see now is what will definitely happen in the future. And it's possible that it's just a one-off situation, at which time asking question is a great way to clear any air. The kind of questions you can also ask about during this phase is personal development. Does the company invest in employees? What about tuition reimbursement? What are the benefits and perks? While benefits and perks are not necessarily culture, culture determines, influences what benefits and perks you get. For instance, if it's a company that values flexibility, benefits and perks will reflect that. So now you've received an offer, or you're already in an organization. Daniella, can you share with us how you would incorporate culture into your life at this point?
Yeah, so culture obviously matters more than just as a job seeker. You may currently be in a role with an organization, or may soon find yourself in one, and maybe the culture is or is not a great fit. And the great news there is that there's always opportunity to shape that from within. So again, that culture is fluid and evolving. It's not set in stone. It is what it is. Everyone has the opportunity to influence culture, whether intentionally or not, as we mentioned earlier. And so you can help shape the culture if and as you desire, with that in mind.
Cool. Now let's talk about some companies who have acted on their espoused cultural values. Slack is, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is a business communication application, a business communication organization similar to Teams or Google Business or one of those things. And one of their core values is putting employees first. In fact, if you guys have time, go ahead and read about the CEO of Slack, because he is known for being an employee-first CEO. So during COVID, many of us faced various different challenges, emotionally, physically, and work-wise. So Slack conducted these employee surveys to collect feedback on their well-being. And based on insights, they came up with these programs where they provided employees with home office stipends. They would give Fridays, monthly company-wide Fridays off, provided support for mental well-being, and caregiving for those who needed it. Risk Methods is a supply chain risk management company, and they have staff across a few different continents. And one of the values they hold dear is employee collaboration, and to encourage connections between teams that are geographically dispersed. What they've done is they launched this employee exchange program where employees would travel to other offices in other countries to meet them in person and learn more about each other's culture. It's to improve cultural education, cross-cultural education. And every time they'd have a new employee, they would host a company-wide lunch for everybody. And usually took a hybrid form with both virtual and in-person attendance. Kin and Karta is another such company that leads digital transformation. And in line with their emphasis on employee development as a goal, they have allocated a stipend for every employee for their learning and development. And they have a buddy system for new hires, where new hires are paired with veteran employees for mentorship. So finally, to wrap up, everybody is different. Everybody's values are different. So consider how much culture matters to you in your job search. And when evaluating a company, look at evidence of their culture at every step of the way. Culture is fluid. It changes, and you can be part of a transformation effort if you choose to be. And remember that work doesn't have to be a thing that we go to every single day in hopes for when the weekend will happen and the paycheck will hit every 2 weeks in our bank account. Culture could be the differentiator between surviving and thriving at work. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Daniella anytime. Here is our contact information. All right. If you have any questions later on, please don't hesitate to reach us at the emails we shared. And thank you for this opportunity. Daniella, would you like to say a few words too?
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here.